Welcome back. My name is Lee from Lever's Kitchen. Today we are preserving tomatoes and we do it 3 different ways. So we're going to make a salsa, which is a tomato puree. We're going to make some pizza sauce and we're also going to make some tomato paste with the tomato skins. So if you saw my recent grocery haul, I purchased these 2 boxes of tomatoes. Now these weren't the cheapest, these were $18 a box, which is around $2 a kilo, which is quite expensive. Now I actually miss the time for when the Roma tomatoes come out. Those come out usually about February, it's now April now. So when I saw these, I kind of just jumped at them and gone, you know what, stuff it. I'm gonna just use these and make some sauce with these. Now, these aren't your sauce tomatoes, but I know I can make them work. And even though this isn't going to be like a cost-effective thing, I really love having my own sauce on the shelf. So even though this wasn't cheap or anything like that, it's something I really want to do. So come along with me today and I'm going to show you how I do it. So these are just your basic round tomatoes. They're a little bit small. They'll be more than fine for sauce. The only issue with these is they'll have more water than your actual Roma tomatoes. So when we go to make this, I'm actually going to show you what I do, and that is I'm actually going to roast these, and it's going to take all the excess water out and everything, and it's going to make life just a lot easier. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wash these, and I'm going to pick out any furry ones. This is a week after I got these. They still look good, but because they've been sitting there, I know there's going to be a couple of furry ones in there. And I'm going to get them all washed up, and I'm going to show you how to slice them up. So I have my oven heating up pretty high. So I've got on 250 degrees Celsius. I just put it up as high as it goes. It's a gas oven, so it takes ages to actually get moisture out of everything. So if you're doing a electric oven, I'll probably have it about 180 degrees Celsius. So now we're going to slice up the actual tomatoes. So one thing to keep in mind is if you're going to actually take the skins off and puree this after in a food processor, you're going to want to take the cores out. So I'll show you how to quickly do that. It's pretty easy. All we're going to do is grab a knife, just go around and just take that core out, like so. I'm going to be putting mine through a tomato press, and that'll take out all the cores and everything like that. So I'm going to leave the cores in, which is going to make life a lot easier. I have all my trays here. I'm going to slice these into quarters. And then we're just going to line these up onto our tray. So it'd be really good if you got kids or anything like that. Get them to help you out and just get them onto your baking trays. I like to do it with the flesh down and the inside pointing up, so that way we can evaporate as much of that moisture as possible. All right, so I'll see you back when I get all 3 trays done. All right, so I've got my first 3 trays done. Now I've only got 2 racks, but the burners down the bottom there is completely covered, and this is a tray that can actually go on the stove. So I'm just going to put that down there. So I'm going to roast these for about 45 minutes, and then we're going to cycle through them, get all of them roasted, and then we're going to make it into sauce. So that's these come out the oven. All right, so this is just the reality of just even a small processing day. So I've still got these ones to roast off. These are the tomatoes that I've roasted off in the oven. And these ones also need to go into the oven as well. So I've still got a little bit to go. So I've realized I've probably bitten off more than I can chew to do all this in just one day. So I actually had the flu on Tuesday, so I'm still kind of getting over that. But I knew these tomatoes had to be done, but right now I'm just not feeling it. So what I'm going to do is we're going to put the cooked tomatoes through the tomato press, and then I'm going to put it into the fridge. and then tomorrow we will make it into our passata, our pizza sauce, and our tomato paste. So this is a Norpo tomato press. I got it last year as a present because I was going to be preserving tomatoes, and it does a decent job. For small batches and everything, it's completely fine. If I was doing massive batches like all the Italians do, I probably wouldn't use this. But other than that, it does a decent job. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run our tomatoes through here, skins and everything. The skins are going to come out this side into this tray, and our sauce is going to come into here. The sauce I'm going to pour into a pot so I can put that in the fridge overnight, and the skins we're going to run for a second time, get as much as we can out of that, and then I'm actually going to boil those skins tomorrow to make our tomato paste. So unfortunately with this, the skins do get a little bit stuck, so I have to use a knife to actually scoop them out and everything. So now I'm going to put these through a second time. So the skins were just getting stuck too much, and it's just a real hassle and everything. So what I decided to do is I got my old Bellini out, which is basically a knockoff Thermomix. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some of these cooked tomatoes into our bowl, and I'm just going to pulse this a few times. That's it there. All right, let's give that a go now. Not perfect, but definitely much better. So that actually went a lot easier, so that's what I'm going to do for the rest of it. All right, so I am back now. So this is what I finished up with. So I've got a pretty big pot of tomato sauce, and then a smaller pot, so probably about, I'm going to say it's probably about 15 litres. And then I have this huge bowl of tomato skins. And so what I'm going to do tomorrow is I'm going to boil them up, extract as much of that tomato out of those skins, and then we're going to make some tomato paste with them. And then hopefully I should have enough to make some passata and some pizza sauce. So I'll see you again tomorrow when we go to do that. So welcome back. It has been 2 days now. So yesterday I woke up and I was like, I need a day off. Now, because I've already processed these, I've heat treated them in the oven and got it to the stage, it's completely safe in the fridge for a couple of days. So I decided to have yesterday off, and we're getting onto this today. So what I have decided to do is I'm going to turn this smaller pot into our passata, our bigger pot here into our pizza sauce, and that's because we need to actually cook this down and make it a bit more thicker. So that is going to reduce the volume, so that's why I'm going to use that pot for our pizza sauce. Plus I actually tend to use pizza sauce probably a bit more than actual passata. And then we're also going to boil down our skins for the tomato paste. So yesterday as well, I've just got all my jars all washed in the dishwasher, and I've just got them in my canner here just to keep them nice and clean and everything, and I'll heat them up before we go and use them. So first we're going to get onto the tomato paste. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this into a big pot. We're going to cook it down for a few hours and let all the tomato all come out of that skin and everything. Then we're going to put it through the tomato press, press all of that flesh out, and then we're going to actually cook it down into a nice tomato paste. And I'll show the hands-off way how to do it. So I didn't want to do this, but I'm going to have to use my canner for this because there is so much actual skins and everything. Plop. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to get this onto the stove. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to cover this with just enough water, just to cover it. So just periodically, just give these tomato skins just a really good stir. Just make sure they're not catching on the bottom of your pot. Keep a lid on them so that way they'll steam and all that liquid's not going to evaporate. So now I'm going to make the pizza sauce. So firstly, let's talk about tested recipes. So here in Australia, we don't really have anywhere that actually has tested recipes uploaded on the internet saying that they've been tested and are safe for canning and everything. Now, some people will go onto Facebook and go to the Rebel Canning group. Those aren't approved methods, and people are canning up cream cheese and SpaghettiOs and everything. Those are potentially dangerous, so you should always find a tested recipe. So for even Australians, I use American sites, so I use Bull Mason, and I also use the Natural Centre of Home Food Preserving, and I get all my articles on there. I have found another recipe on the Bull Mason group, which is the basil tomato, and that is the basil tomato sauce, and that's got onion, fresh garlic, fresh basil, bit of olive oil, and some onion in it, and I think that is going to be perfect as a pizza sauce. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cook that down, and I'm going to make a thicker sauce, which they say you can do, and we're going to have that as our pizza sauce. So for this recipe, we're going to need a cup of onion. We're going to need 8 cloves of fresh garlic. Some of the other recipes had garlic powder in it, and I was like, nope. And fresh basil, 1/4 cup. And this is what I was excited about as well, because like the other recipes all said dry basil as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut up this onion and garlic and get all this ready, and then I'm going to show you what to do with the next step. I promise I'm not sad, it's just a fresh onion. So I've measured out my onion, so that was 1 cup, which is exactly 1 onion. I've got a 1/4 cup of chopped basil, and then I've got our 8 cloves of garlic here. Now this is for 10 pounds of tomatoes that haven't actually been pureed yet. So this is more than enough puree than your 10 pounds, so this ratio is going to be perfect for it. So what I'm going to do is we're going to actually cook these off on the stove and get them translucent and flavorful. And then I'm going to show you a different method to actually cook this off, because the issue with this is in this pot, it's going to take forever because we want to get as much surface area as possible. So I'm going to show you a different way to actually how to do it. So I have a frying pan here just heating on a medium heat. I'm going to grab a bit of olive oil. And we're just going to fry off our onions, as well as our garlic. And I'm going to turn that down to about a medium heat, and I want to cook this really slowly for about 5 minutes. All right, so I'll let these cook down for about 5 minutes. You can see they're nice and translucent. The onion's going to add a nice sweetness to these tomatoes, especially because they are just your basic store-bought tomatoes. And that garlic is going to add so much flavour as well, especially with it being fresh garlic. So for most people, what they'll do is they'll cook it in a large pot and then they'll add the tomatoes. I'm going to do the opposite today. I've cooked the onions and the garlic, and I'm going to add this to our tomatoes. And we're going to cook it off a certain way so that I can get some stove space. I've only got 2 burners that actually really work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stir all of those onions in. I'm then going to add our basil. Then lastly, I'm just going to add some salt to this. Because I am cooking this down, I don't want to add too much salt now, but I do want to add a bit now. So I'm going to add probably about a teaspoon now, and you can add as much salt as you want. It doesn't actually affect your canning or anything. So if you like a bit more salt, go for it. So I've got probably about a teaspoon in there now. I'll adjust it later when I go to taste it after it's thickened, because that's all going to go into condensed down and everything. I'm going to do what I did yesterday. I'm going to put this sauce into trays in the oven, and I'm actually going to cook it off in the oven. And the reason why I'm going to cook it off in the oven is in a stove, you're only going to get your heat underneath and it's very uneven. If I put it into the oven, you've got heat coming from the sides, underneath, and on top as well. So it actually condenses down a lot quicker. So now I have cleaned my slop up. I'm going to get these into the oven, and we're going to let these cook for a while. Now, it's completely up to you how thick you want it and everything. I want this thick enough so that it's going to stay on a parma, or it's going to go into a pizza, and it's not going to make it soggy. So we're not asking for like a tomato paste consistency. I just want this thick enough so that it's not going to be too watery or anything like that. Yeah, you didn't slop it. With the pizza sauce, I'm just going to stir that probably about every 20 minutes and just make sure it's not sticking around the edges. That's where I find it usually does start to burn and everything. At one stage, I will rotate around the pans and make sure they're all evenly getting heated up and everything. I think that's just going to be a nice, easy way to just condense that down. So now I have my passata, or our tomato sauce. Now, this is pretty runny. It looks like the day after Taco Bell. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cook this down a little bit on the stove and just get it just slightly thicker and just get some of that water cooked off. I did use just your traditional normal tomatoes. I didn't use Roma tomatoes, so there isn't a lot of flesh in these tomatoes. So it has resulted in a bit of a runnier sauce, even though we did roast them off in the oven. So while both of those are cooking down a little bit, we're going to get our tomato paste organised. So what we're going to do is, this is all cooked down quite nicely, and you can see all the skins and everything have all separated from the pulp and everything. And what we're going to do is we're going to pass it through the tomato press again, and then all the liquid that we have left over, we're going to cook that down, and we're going to condense it right down into tomato paste. And we're going to do the same method as we're doing with our pizza sauce. We're going to put it into the oven, and we're just going to leave it for a few hours and just really just let that just gradually just condense down quite a lot. And then after this pot is empty, I'm going to get it washed out and have it set up as my canning jar, and then I can get the other two all jarred up and canned while that's in the oven. So the same as yesterday, I'm going to grab our pulp here, put it through the tomato press, and then once that pulp has come out, I'm going to put it through again and get as much as we can out of it. So now these are going through, I'm going to put them through again, and we just want to extract as much as we can out of it. Right, so I'm now going to get my canner set up. So now I've given this a good wash. There is a bit up on the bottom there, but that won't affect the actual canning. So what I have here is just a standard stock pot. I have a metal cake rack, which is put in the bottom there. And I'm going to add enough water just to cover the rack, but we're not going to fully cover it. And the reason why is we're going to actually steam can today. So I'm just going to get my jars in here, and I'm going to get this heating up on just a medium heat, just to allow those jars to just steam and get nice and warm. So I've got about half a pot of the tomato juice here, and this is the pulp here. So you can see this has gone down quite a bit. It was overflowing when we first started to use it, so that's good. So really, you could put this through another time with some water, simmer it down, and do it again. You know, but I've got time for that. So I'm just going to call this done, and that's going to go into the worm farm. And for this, we are going to cook this down into the tomato paste. For now, what I've decided to do is we're going to start jarring up our passata. That has cooked down enough where I'm happy with it, and we're going to get it canned. So I have a stock pot here with a rack in the bottom, and I've put all my jars in there, and I've just put enough water just to cover the rack just a little bit. And the reason why is I'm actually going to steam can this. And the great things about steam canning is one, you're not using so much water. Secondly, it's going to heat up a lot faster because you're not heating up a huge pot of water. And thirdly, it's a lot safer because there's actually no huge thing of water to actually accidentally drop a jar into and splash yourself or anything like that. So it's a lot better. And once you understand the theory of a steam canner compared to water bath canning, it's very similar. So a water bath canner will boil rapidly at 100 degrees, and that will process the jars. The steam in a steam canner will fill this. It'll start coming out, and you know when you're cooking veggies or anything like that, and you got the steamer, and you got your little hole on top, and the steam's puming out. That means this whole thing is full of steam, and that means steam is at 100 degrees, same temperature as boiling water. And that is going to process our jars. And it's just so much easier. Right, so we're ready to actually get this all jarred up and get the processing. So these are your mason jars. I'm just going to go through all the stuff that, just in case no one actually knows. And weirdly, I've never brought ball mason jars, and I have a ball mason jar. And all the other jars that I have are honestly made in China. So I'm wondering if they've actually come from the same factory. Not too sure though. And then we're going to need to acidify our tomato sauce. Now, it doesn't matter that your nonna didn't do it. Things have changed with tomatoes as they've been made more sweeter and less acidic. So you've got a choice. You can use citric acid or you can use bottled lemon juice. And the reason why you want to use bottled lemon juice is because the acidity of the bottled lemon juice has been basically made all the same for lemon juice that's in a bottle. A few other things you're going to need a ladle, you're going to need a canning funnel. It just makes life a lot easier. Then you got your headspace checker and your debubbler. Then you have your jar lifters. And then you have your canning lids. Now, when I buy my canning jars, I just get them from like Cheapest Chips, and they come with these single piece, single lids, and they're perfectly fine. They're kind of frowned upon with the canning practices and everything, and they strongly suggest you use a two-piece lid. So I have some of these two-piece lids as well that I'm going to be using today as well. So both of them work really good. Just the one piece, they're just a lot easier. All right, so I'm going to get it all set up and we're going to get it all jarred up. So for every pint of tomato sauce, we need a quarter teaspoon of citric acid. If we're doing quarts, which is almost a litre, that is half a teaspoon of citric acid. And you can also use lemon juice. I don't like the flavour of lemon juice in my tomatoes, so that's why I'm using this instead. And if you're going to use lemon juice, it is 1 tablespoon for a pint and 2 tablespoons for a quart. So now I'm going to fill these up, and I'm going to fill them up to a 1/2 inch headspace. I do have a headspace checker though, so we're going to be using that today. So I'll just quickly show you with this one and then I'll get the rest of them done. So firstly, we're going to do debubble. And that's just to make sure there's no air bubbles on the bottom there. That can inhibit the actual seal. And then we're going to check our headspace. So on here, we've got a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch, and 1 inch. So we need 1/2 inch. And we see we are a little bit shy. So I'm just going to top this up with just a little bit more. Like so. So now we're at our 1/2 inch headspace. The next thing we want to do is wipe our rims. So if you're using something with fat in it, you're going to want to use some vinegar on some paper towel. I'm just using some water here. And then all we're going to do is grab our lid here, turn it until it's finger tight. So don't want to crank it on or anything. And that's ready for the canner. And I'm just going to get the rest of them done. All right, so now all these are jarred up, I'm gonna get them into the canner. So as you can see, my canner is still warm right now. All right, so now I'm gonna crank the heat up. So I'm gonna turn this on high, and I'm gonna wait till steam starts coming out this little hole. And when steam comes out the hole, that means this whole pot has all pressurized with steam, and it's all trying to come out. So once this hole has steam coming out of it, that means we can start our 35-minute processing time for pints and 40-minute processing time for quarts. So I do have my air conditioning on right now, so unfortunately you can see it is blowing a little bit, but you can see all the steam is now pushing out. That means this is full of steam now, so now I can set a timer for 35 minutes and then they're gonna be ready. Meanwhile as well, I've got our tomatoes for the tomato paste heating up, ready to go into the trays for the oven. All right, so I need to get this tomato paste into the oven now because it's going to take quite a while. It's going to take probably a couple of hours, to be honest. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my pizza sauce that we cooked down, and you know, it looks pretty good. I'm going to pour this into a pot. Now I still do have another tray in the oven, and that one did take a little bit longer to actually cook down, so I've still got that in there. But I do need to start this tomato paste. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this into a pot. And with this pizza sauce, now is the time to actually taste it for seasoning. So there's two things we can add to this. So if it's too acidic, we can add a little bit of sugar. And if it needs salt, we can add salt as well. Those two things do not affect the actual processing of it. So let's give it a go. And I think that's pretty good. I've still got one more tray in there. I'll combine it all and then we'll reheat that and we'll get that into the jars. So I have our heated tomato puree for the tomato paste. And I'm just going to pour some of this into our tray. Just heating it up is going to allow it to heat up in the oven a lot quicker. And you want quite a thin layer. The more you have in there, the longer that's going to take to actually cook down. So I'm going to get these two in the oven, and when that one's ready, I'll fill that one up as well. All right, so that's our 35-minute timer. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn the stove off. So I'm just going to let that cool down for a good 5 minutes, and then we're going to take the jars out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get another litre of water into my pot, and I'm going to add all my jars, get that heating up, and I'm also going to heat up our pizza sauce, bring that to a boil again, and then we're going to get that jarred up. So every now and then, just give that tomato paste just a really good stir. Make sure it's not catching around the edges of the pan. You can see this one's condensed down quite a bit. Right, so our pizza sauce has come to a simmer. I've checked seasoning and it is perfect now. So now we're going to get it all jarred up. And as it goes, the processing and everything is the exact same. So we're going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of citric acid to each jar, and we're going to process it for 35 minutes. All right, so the tomato paste is now done. So I'm going to take it out and I'm going to put it into a bowl just to make it easier to put into our containers. So it's really common for it to catch around the edges, so just keep an eye on it. I just let it catch and just don't use that bit. And there we go, homemade tomato paste, made with what we would have actually thrown out. So to store this, I have these ice cube trays that are in long form, and they are perfect for this. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to squash it in. Probably going to get maybe a tray, maybe tray and a half. I don't use a lot of tomato paste. Since I've gone low carb, I don't eat pasta or anything like that a lot. So I find I don't use tomato paste as much as I used to. And by low carb, I just mean I might eat pasta maybe once a month. Rice once a month. Bread only when necessary. No breakfast, because breakfast is basically dessert. And there we go. We're going to let that cool down and get that into the freezer. So let's look at what we got here. So we've got 7 jars of passata. 2 of these jars still haven't sealed yet, but you can usually tell when they're sealed. See how that sounds? That one hasn't sealed yet. They're still warm, so they might still seal. If they haven't sealed, I'll put them into the fridge and use them first. Then we have 5 jars of our pizza sauce that is going to go great on pizzas or parmas, and they just came out the container, so they haven't all sealed yet. Hopefully all do. And then our tomato paste, which we've made with scraps that we would have actually thrown out. So I think that's pretty awesome. Now, is this cost effective? No. But what I'd like to do is each year I like to try and do some canning just to get myself used to it and everything. I really hope to one day have a huge garden where I can grow as much produce as possible. So I want to practice as much as I can. And this is the method that I have devised and I like, and I think that's a thing that you got to do if you want to do canning. You got to try different recipes and just get out there and try it. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.